development plan for would look like. With that, I'm very grateful to have the floor to introduce Honorable Ron Dellums.
Thank you for a very humbling introduction. Brothers and sisters, first of all, thank those of you who put this together, and thank all of you for coming. First thing I want to say is that in this time in my life, I have a new occupation. It's telling people that I wasn't in the movie. What was it? No, I was in No. People come up to me and they go, I just love you. And with the way people see elected officials, they go, that's an amazing thing. I followed your career, oh, I just love you to death. You were fantastic in the Shawshank Redemption. So at this time in my life, my occupation is saying, no, I am not Morgan Freeman. This woman goes, sign the autograph, and now I'm thinking, wait a minute, who do you think I am? You're Morgan Freeman, sign the autograph. And I said, ma'am, I really wish I could be Morgan Freeman for you, but I'm not. She said, look over my shoulder. You see those 4 women across the street? They don't know that sign. So somewhere there's a thing that goes, best wishes, Morgan Freeman. But anyway, I kept thinking, all night, how would I start this speech with you? So I decided that I'm going to talk with you as planners and the challenges that I see before, but I want to lay a predicate. I had the honor and the privilege of growing up in the Bay Area. I'm standing before you on Thanksgiving Day. I'm going to be 81 years old. I made it that far, super cool. And some people told me that if a black man makes 80, the figures go up exponentially that you could live to be 100. So I'm going to see, And so there's need for us to have an intergenerational conversation. Because for my generation, it's not our first rodeo. You are sitting at a university that was in a community that way back 50 years ago found itself on a street corner that the world had to pass. This community got there 30 years ahead of its time. Unlike any other community, for those of you who don't know, unlike any other community in America, in the South there was the Civil Rights Movement. In some places there was a movement to end the war in Vietnam. But in this community, every movement of the 60s emerged in close proximity and great simultaneity across all these different lines. So we were forced to hear each other's music. We read each other's poetry. We listened to each other's analysis. We felt each other's pain. We sensed each other's rage. We understood each other's anger. We were the young black guys. We called ourselves the young black mama. We were out there to change the world. But then women came to us and said, hey brothers, in case you haven't figured it out, you don't have to be black to be oppressed. You can be a woman and be oppressed. And we went, ooh. Love that. Part of our new analysis. People came to us and said, you can be gay and be oppressed. Part of our analysis. We went out to meetings and we would hear young, erudite, articulate people advance opposition to the Vietnam War, or young socialists, or young left-wing people who would come with very sophisticated economic analysis, and we would go back home and say, man, that was a bad white dude. Did you check his rap? So the next time we would talk, we got that part of that analysis. They got part of our analysis because we heard each other, we listened to each other, we went back and forth with each other. And so interestingly enough, in this community emerged the basis for the human family to come together because we understood coalition politics. And I had the honor and the privilege You know, because I didn't want to be a politician. I mean, we came from Berkeley. We didn't even trust politicians in the 60s. But people said, Ron, we need you. Would you serve if the community asked you to serve? Didn't know how to say no. So I ended up in politics, but I just wanted to be a damn good social worker. Didn't want to be in politics. But they sent me to Washington. You know, I get elected, the Vice President of the United States goes, did you know that there's a young black man on his way to Washington from Berkeley, California, that I consider the most dangerous radical since Vito Marcantonio of the 1920s? And I go, man, I haven't even won the general election yet. So there was a target when I first came in. I remember the first day I walked into the floor of Congress, they didn't know that I could hear them, because my friends used to call me radar ears, because I could hear them. It gets a little more difficult the older you get. But I walked in, and somebody said, have you seen that radical SOB yet? And I went, damn, if that's how the Democrats see me, I wonder how. Later they were to tell me, Ron, we're just going to be honest with you, but we thought that when you came to Congress, you were going to swing in from the chandelier with combat boots, bandolier bullets, black beret, free Huey buttons, and power sign. I walked in with an Italian Brioni suit. They didn't know me yet, because they thought I was coming a different way. Okay, but I was honored to serve because here was a community that was way ahead of its time. We understood injustice. We understood that peace was a superior idea. So with that as a backdrop, just so you know, you can put me in a frame of reference. I don't see myself as a dinosaur of the 60s. That's dated. But I do sense that we need to communicate and to talk with each other. Before I get into my planning thoughts, I had the honor and the great pleasure of being a visiting scholar and a visiting fellow at Howard University, one of the premier black institutions in America. At a time when the problems lend themselves to universality, here I am at this institution having represented a community that understood coalition politics 50 years ago. Fantastic experience. I'd come home and my wife said, man, you got your mojo back. Thank you. Because being around these young people was absolutely stunning and amazing. I was in one classroom and one young woman, she identified herself, she said she was from the Bay Area. And she said, Congressman Dellums, if you could tell us one thing to do, what would you tell us to do? So I did like this. I'm texting you. I'm emailing you. Is this guy nuts? So let me tell you what I'm telling you. Look up. The world is bigger than this iPhone. Look up. The world is bigger than your iPad. Look up and see a 14-year-old young black male who doesn't think he's going to live to be 17. Look up into the face of that young Latina who's frightened to death that she and her family are going to be deported. Look up into the face of that senior citizen who doesn't know where the next meal is going to come from. Look up even into the face of your enemy and your adversary and sense their humanity. And in that quiet gesture, you open great possibilities of problem solving and mutuality. Look up. Look up and see the environment that you're living in. Look up and see the ecology of what's going on and see how people are screwing up the world. Look up and see the world. Because here, you don't have to address your humanity or anybody else's. But looking up, endless potential and possibilities. Which leads me to my speech. Look up and look at what is happening in the urban environments in America. I was born in Oakland, grew up at 1014 Wood Street. I see Oakland, grew up at 10th and Wood. One of my friends takes me a month ago to 8th and Wood, 2 blocks from my hood, and said, Ron, see that house on the corner? It just sold for $1.3 million. Who can live there? Community's changing. I pick up the newspaper, I'm in D.C. I went back there. Oakland, #1 in terms of cost of housing, rental. People have to earn over 100 and some percent of income, working full time, over $30 an hour just to rent a place. So right before our eyes, there's dislocation. I call it dislocation because if we call it gentrification, those become fighting words, because you say it's gentrification, then it's white guys pushing out people of color, and it's a racial confrontation. No, it's more complicated than that. Why are the cities of America, why is Berkeley changing? Why is Oakland changing? Why is San Francisco changing? Why are communities all over the country changing? Why are the demographics of urban environment changing rapidly? When we fought all along for our city to reflect our humanity, I believe cities are living organisms that evolve and grow. That cities have an ecology. So if we could talk about the variety of species, then aren't human beings part of the ecology? So how do you move people out? What's happening? I think that there are 2 major factors that are contributing to the displacement in the cities of this country. One of them, technological advancements. And I'm not a Neanderthal. I don't think you can stop technology. That's bizarre. Counterintuitive. Scientific change is going to happen. It's going to go. It's going to be there. The question becomes, do we have a blind eye to the implications and the ramifications of that technological advancement? So do we say, I don't care who gets displaced. Technological change is technological change, and let the chips fall where they may. But what's our moral obligation? What is our human obligation? What's our political and intellectual obligation to each other? And if we decide that this is not just one sector of our community, but sometime in our activism we like to create an us and them world, we simplify it, it's us versus the other guys. But this is a responsibility of the entire community to solve those problems. It's the private sector that's engaging in technological change, but it's also the human side of our community. It's the political side of our community, because these are complex problems that require complex responses. So it's the entire community that has to come together to say, no, we will not cast a blind eye. We will see that these technological changes are real, but that we will not cast off people and just let them flounder. So we push them out of the urban environment. And my principle says that if you live there, you should be able to stay there. And how do we as a community come together? Do we come together to re-educate me in this high-tech environment that I'm in? I used to work at the cannery. I used to work at the bottle company. I used to work as a manufacturer. I don't have the skills. Okay, so what's the community's responsibility to give that person the capability, the skills to deal with it? If in that atmosphere with technological change, the developers go, wow, there's a whole new opportunity to build new condos and new apartments. So the rent starts to go up. So now we need to deal with what are the housing policies that will ensure that the diversity of our communities continue to exist. Do we have housing policies that maintain affordable housing, that allows the community to continue to be diverse, that it reflects the human family? Do we develop transportation policies that zoom into a neighborhood and suddenly the people that live there are displaced because the dynamics have now changed. And those low-income folks are now replaced by people living in high-rise apartments, high-rent apartments, and spanking brand new condos that they can't live in. What's our responsibility as planners? To anticipate and say, oh, it's not just policy in a vacuum. We have to care about the implications and the ramifications. So how do we, if you agree with me that a community is strong, the extent to which its citizens are well-trained, well-educated, well-informed, and healthy. CDC is saying that with this tremendous dislocation in cities all over the country, it is contributing to health problems. Life expectancy shorting. Indices of cancer and heart disease and other things going up. So these are real things, and they're real human beings who are being harmed by that. But let me not dwell on the technological side of it. But it's challenges that we must face, and in my humble opinion, it's challenges that we can overcome with our brilliance and our genius, which does reside in our communities, which resides on this campus, which resides in places all over the country. If there's the political will, the ethical and moral obligation, the human response to say, no, we will not trample on